These days, British Foreign Secretary David Lammy cannot stop showering praises on US President-elect Donald Trump. He's so obsessed with Trump that he doesn't even find anything wrong in the incoming president of the US issuing threats to illegally annex Greenland, Panama Canal and Canada. This despite the fact that Trump not ruling out military force to fulfill his imperialist desire.
Please.
President, thank you. Wanted to touch on the world on fire that you mentioned, but let's start, if we could, with your references to Greenland and the Panama Canal, so forth. Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your plan is? Are you going to negotiate a new treaty? Are you going to ask the Canadians to hold a vote? What is the strategy?
Yeah, I can't assure you, you're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this, we need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China. And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It should have never been made, by the way. Giving the Panama Canal is why Jimmy Carter lost the election, in my opinion.
Such is Trump's audacity that he addresses the Canadian Prime Minister as Governor Trudeau, as if he's already declared Canada the 51st state of the US. And yet, Lammy finds wisdom in Trump's imperialist plans. But why is this important? Isn't this what you expect from a British minister, since the UK government, regardless of which party is in power, has historically behaved as America's poodles? But Lammy's case is different. That's because he has made quite strong statement in the past against Trump. He wrote this on Twitter in 2017, nearly 1 year after Trump had become the US president. And I quote, regarding Daily Mail story today, yes, if Trump comes to the UK, I will be out protesting on the streets. He is a racist KKK and Nazi sympathizer. End of quote. The same year, this man wrote on Twitter, and I quote, Trump sharing Britain first, let that sink in. The President of the United States is promoting a fascist, racist, extremist hate group whose leaders have been arrested and convicted. He is no ally or friend of ours. Donald Trump, you are not welcome in my country and in my city. End of quote. In another tweet, the same day he wrote, and I quote, do not forget that the man who murdered Joe Cox shouted Britain first. Trump has gone beyond the pale today. End of quote. As if this guy was on a mission to slam Trump and didn't want to miss any opportunity to publicly slam him, he shared a video clip of Trump's presidential debate in 2020 and wrote this on Twitter, and I quote, Donald Trump cannot even bring himself to explicitly condemn white supremacists. The whole world will breathe a sigh of relief if this dangerous clown is booted out of office this November. End of quote. Just pay attention to the word clown. And he's actually praying for this man to be booted out. And he didn't stop here. Sharing a video clip of Trump's election speech in 2019, Lammy had tweeted, and I quote, a cult of white supremacists chanting send her back in support of Donald Trump's racist attack on Ilhan Omar. Fascism spreads like wildfire, especially when it comes from the President of the United States of America. Chilling to my core. End of quote. And the list goes on. But when he was asked about Trump this week by ITV, Lammy astonishingly described him a gracious leader who had provided him a free meal. Yes, This is all it took for him to change his opinion about Trump, or at least this is how it appears.
You describe Trump as a woman-hating, neo-Nazi, sympathising sociopath. Do you still think that?
Oh, well, that's old news. I've been on the front bench now for 5 years. The truth is you can pull out all sorts of tweets that backbenchers may have said 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago.
Do you still think it? Or is
I found Donald Trump very gracious. When I met him in September, we sat down for 3 hours. He didn't give me just one meal, he gave me 2 meals. And we talked about some very serious issues.
Is that all it takes for you to change your mind, a free meal?
Very, very gracious to me and to Keir Starmer, and I look forward to working with him and his administration on the serious issues of the day.
So a free meal is all it takes?
I look forward to working with Donald Trump in the coming months because the seriousness of the foreign policy challenges that we're facing, I'll set them out in a speech today, the seriousness of war in Europe, of war in the Middle East, our concerns, our shared concerns about growth in the global economy and about migration means that we have to work together.
Then a Sky News presenter asked him to comment on Trump's plans to illegally occupy Greenland and Panama Canal. His response was, well, he hasn't annexed them yet. And even if Trump did, the US has genuine concerns about the Chinese influence in that region. Watch the video and decide for yourself what you make of this stand.
To move on to some of the comments we've seen in recent days by the President-elect Donald Trump towards Greenland, towards Panama Canal. I'm sure you've seen them. Do you think that's classic Donald Trump?
Yes, I do think it's classic.
It's not something that worries you.
It's classic Donald Trump. Look, I think that what sits behind Donald Trump is he's just won an election. 77 million people voted for him, up in nearly all classifications, including, by the way, African Americans and Latinos. He came in very clearly saying he was going to work for working people. And he sees Americans' national economic security as centering that. That is why he's raising issues in relation to the Panama Canal and I suspect to Greenland. He always amplifies that and does it at its most as its strongest intensity, but sitting behind that are actually quite serious national security and economic issues.
Your French counterpart, and indeed the German Chancellor, felt his comments in recent days were enough to speak out against them. Obviously, there's a difference between comments, whilst you're still President-elect, and actions, but are we seeing a difference in approach there between you and your government and Germany and France, that you'll wait to see if he crosses a line physically rather than talks about crossing a line?
I suspect the difference in Germany is that they're fighting an election. We're not in an election season here, we fought an election. What sits behind those comments are issues of national security. The Panama Canal, he's raised issues around China's influence. I think those are legitimate issues, actually, that, of course, we raised those sorts of issues here in the UK. The issues around Greenland have been raised before. In the end, that is up to the people of Greenland and their own self-determination. And there is a discussion within Greenland about those very same issues.
But he was asked in one of the press conferences, would you rule out using military or economic force to seize either of them? And he said, no, he wouldn't rule those two things.
Well, that's the amplification of the intensity of the rhetoric. But let's be clear, no NATO countries have gone to war since the establishment of NATO, and I don't envisage that.
So the rhetoric, though, in the meantime, you wouldn't condemn. Obviously, the actions you would, if it got to that.
I'm not in the business of condemning our closest ally. I am in the business of interpreting what sits behind this. And there are some very serious national economic security issues. That's the basis on which Donald Trump has won his election. And let me just say, he is saying in America that his number one issue is growth and his second issue is migration. Guess what? We're saying the same thing here in the UK under our government. So we can find common cause on these issues.
And you thought this man has been horrible with both his words and deeds on the ongoing genocide in Gaza? Talking about Gaza, one of the reasons why Trump is emboldened to occupy any country or geographical land illegally with impunity is because he has seen the utter disdain by the global community to powerful institutions such as the ICJ and ICC, among others. These are the institutions that were created to hold corrupt politicians to account. So Trump knows that if you can get away on Gaza, you can actually get away on Greenland, Panama Canal, and even Canada. The collective silence to the brutal imperialism of the West in Gaza has turned the world into a lawless place. Let's not deny that. That's a real truth. As for Lammy, we all know politics is not meant for decent people these days. But the way UK Foreign Secretary is going, he is determined to get his name engraved in the history book as a politician who truly redefined the words spineless and opportunist. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism on buymeacoffee.com and Patreon. If you too think that our journalism is worth supporting, then you too should consider becoming part of it. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.